we're back. We're back, Steve. The Chinwag is back.
Great to see you, Mr. Giamatti.
Great to see you. Always great to see you. Always a pleasure to be in your distinguished company, sir. In your fine, distinguished company. You know?
And your sarcasm is showing. Okay. I see how it is.
That was not sarcasm. This is troubling to me that the people can't tell sarcasm with me. Everybody thinks I'm being sarcastic.
I do believe that you are sincere. I think you play some sarcastic characters.
I do, Steve, but let's separate reality and fiction, shall we? Let's,
You have a pure heart of sincerity and truth.
Let me feel the sarcasm. Jesus, I was just, wow. Oh, boy. I think we should move on. This has gotten ugly already. My God.
Let's turn to the fans.
Yes, let's turn to the people who are pure of heart, Steve. The good fans, the good listeners of Chinwag. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you back. We have a special episode coming up. This is a second of 2 parts with Mr. Tom Hanks.
The amazing Tom Hanks.
The amazing Tom Hanks, because we chatted a lot.
Yeah, he was quite forthcoming.
He's a talker, man. That guy just goes on and on and on.
Fascinating guy.
Fascinating guy, actually, very much so. But before we get to that, as usual, we have our reminders, our requests, our pleas, which are rate us, review us.
Yeah. Get down to Apple Podcasts and also drop comments at YouTube, Instagram, and if you're particularly sweet and complimentary, you might get mentioned on the podcast itself.
That's true.
No promises, but
no, that's true. Yeah, questions, anything, comments are always welcome. And how about this? Why don't you just contact your friends directly and get them to listen? Do it right now.
That's right.
Text them this thing right now.
Right now.
Right now. I'm going to wait. No, it's great. Just bring in, just because I figure it's just a chain of weirdness. You probably know other weird people, listeners.
Yeah. People who are listening to us are already on the cusp of sanity. And so they know a whole bunch of other people who are willing to wag on as weirdos.
Push them over the edge. Push them over the precipice into insanity for us. Enough of that. Let's get on to our second delightful part of conversation with Tom Hanks, the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece. Here it is, Mr. Tom Hanks.
We read this great short story by you about time travel too, and it's why it's a great fantasy for film and for literature is because, like you said, you're born in a climate. If it's a hot climate, you're going to live there. If you're born in a monarchy, you're going to live under it. But with time travel fantasies, you can pull yourself out of the determinism of your condition. And you can be like, what would it be like if I lived in ancient Rome or if I lived way in the future? And I'm sort of wondering, like, where would you go if you could time travel? Here I'm just sort of impinging
It's in that story. It's called Because the Past is Important to Us. And I would go back.
Right.
I would go back to 1939. But
that's where you would go.
Yeah. And here's why.
Well, explain where the guy goes in the story, please.
It's a story about a company that starts offering time travel vacations. It's called Chronometric Adventures. But you can only go to very specific places. Because half of the thing you got to explain in a time travel thing is the logic of time travel. Yeah.
Right.
You can only ride a certain part of the echo. The bounce only lasts so long. And lo and behold, in the time-space continuum, as this echo passes through us, you have to be in a very specific place to jump onto the echo, and you have to jump off the echo at the same exact space.
Yeah.
And so that's why you got to be in room 114 in a certain hotel in New York City that never, anyway, blah, blah, blah. And you can only go back to a day in 1939, and you only have 22 hours to spend there. So what are you going to do in 1939? You're going to go to the World's Fair. You go to the World's Fair because you know exactly where it is. Because if you were to go back to ancient Rome, You would not speak the language, you see. And that's the thing about time travel movies. They go back a long time. And guess what? Suddenly everybody speaking colloquial English, you know?
You're screwed. Yeah.
You wouldn't understand it. Wouldn't understand.
And you're also probably going to catch some disease immediately. That's going to, like, you know, God knows, you're going to pass out from the smell probably.
You might be taller than everybody else there, and they're not going to like that. They're
weirdly taller.
Not going to have it. Not going to have any money. But I would go back to that period, because as the lay historian that I am, it's like that period of time between the wars, between World War I and World War II, are the crucible for all of the history that we have been living ever since. The rise of that brand of fascism, and along with it, the communism that came after, particularly World War II, and imperialism because of it, that was essentially geographically based, that we had to have geography in order to control the world. You had to have land. You had to have the produce that came out of that land. You had to control the populace that lived there. When that war was over and the concept of trade and alliances came back into it, that meant geography was no longer the harbinger of wealth and power and the ability in order to defend what. Anyway, that's part of that is my perhaps philosophy. But 1939, that World's Fair was meant to be 100% altruistic, that essentially just said, look how great things are going to be. And there isn't a soul on earth who, after a couple of years of the formation of the United Nations, could honestly say, oh, just how wonderful things are going to be. The World's Fair had TV. Are you ready for this? The World's Fair had FDR opening it, I think in April or somewhere of 1939, and it was broadcast on television.
On television.
Wow.
And what was called television at this point? Was it called television at this point?
And chances are there were probably maybe 20 receivers and you had to go to an office in order to watch it. But this was 1939. Totally. Now, if the war hadn't come along, imagine how quick television would have been. And you could go to the World's Fair and stand at a microphone and be on camera. And in another room, your family could watch you in real time on TV. Cool. And it was living radio. Along with how great steamships were going to be and the promise of the airplane and how, pi is going to come in measured units and all this other stuff is going on. It was just a celebration of look at what we have learned and look at what life is going to be like in 1960.
Yeah.
We'll live in the world. Now, they did not take into account an awful lot. In 1939, there was an exhibition for the nation of Poland. The country of Poland paid money and said, hey, we're going to build an exhibition hall about Poland, talk about how great Poland is. That was in 1939. Well, the fair continued into 1940, but there was no more Poland hall because there was no more Poland.
Wow.
Because the Nazis had overrun it. And just for the sake of things, the statue of the King of Poland that was in that exhibition is now in Central Park. Just off from, so if you were walking in Central Park, it's just across the park from the Delacorte Theater, if you will.
Fascinating.
Oh, and here's something else. The big parachute ride that was part of the World's Fair, the structure for that is still out at Coney Island. It's that big odd tower.
Yes, I think, sure. Yeah. Oh, that's what that is.
You can still see all these little things from.
You don't want to go to 1939 to then live through World War II. You just want to go for a day, it sounds like, because that guy in the story is just, you're just like, okay,
going to get a cup of coffee, going to ride the sidewalks.
And our time travel fantasy, I don't want to go back for a long time. But it's interesting, you're picking a place, you're going back to a place that's looking to the future. Yeah, are you interested in the future at all?
Well, okay.
Would you want to go into the future? Would you want to know what the hell's coming? Are you interested?
Let's go back. And I've said this many times. Let's go back to, I'm 67 years old. So let's go back to 1966. Okay. If you could say to me, by the time you're 60, there will be no more Soviet Union. We will have stopped going to the moon, but you can watch any movie that has ever existed on a device the size of your phone, and also talk to anybody on the planet Earth. I would have said, wait, can we go back to that no Soviet Union thing? I understand that TV is going to get better and phones will be great. And I believe that robots can buy our cars and drive them and stuff like that. But wait, can we go back to that? Can we go back to that Russia thing again?
Well, but that is, in a weird way, one of the most mind-blowing things. You're right. That kind of cultural shift, like that's really hard to get your head around. I mean, if I went into the past, I think I'd want to go, I don't know. I think I would want to go look at ancient Rome. I don't need to interact with anybody. I'll try to keep my distance.
You think you can walk around ancient Rome and keep to yourself and just see it long enough?
And my Doc Ellis t-shirt.
Doc Ellis.
My Doc Ellis t-shirt. I would have to go into the past just because I'm too interested to want to. It's like I gotta sort of see. I think I'd be very interested to go really far back and maybe see some of the prehistoric stuff and see some of that stuff where I'm definitely going to get killed in 5 seconds by a gigantic hornet or something.
Well, maybe not.
Or a Neanderthal's going to bring
Maybe they don't view you as food, you know? Okay,
True,
Stephen, Art has given us 2 versions of a version for each of them, going back in time and going forward in time. Let's go back in time first. Thornton Wilder's Our Town.
Oh, yeah.
Emily, who has died, wants to go back and live one single day of her life, right? And everybody who's dead says, don't do it. We all wanted to, don't do it. She says, no, I'm going to go back. And she went back and revisited her 8th birthday, right? And it was heartbreaking for her because she says nobody knew how special it was. Nobody knew how to take every moment so precious it was. It ended up being a very, very bittersweet experience. Yeah. Okay. That's the past. So there's a reason not to go in the past. Let's come up with a reason not to go into the future. Charleton Heston on the beach in Malibu.
Damn dirty apes.
They blew it up. They blew it up. You know, there's a statue of them. Down there. Blew it up.
Part of H.G. Wells' Time Machine, which people forget about because he's finished fighting the Morlocks or whatever, and he accidentally hits the thing, and he shoots millions of years into the future.
Mistake. That's right.
Oh yeah. And he's in the same place because you don't move in space, you just move in time. And he's like suddenly on a beach, and there's just these like writhing crab creatures. And I sort of would like to see the time after humans. Like, what's it going to be like when we're all gone, or we're something else? We're a different species,
or we're something else.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I want to believe that we're going to have wings and shit like that, or giant something, or we're going to be
stuff.
like, so that I want giant heads.
So I say do this.
And super long fingers.
Let's send an iPhone on panorama setting on the camera.
Okay,
put that up there, and then get that back, and we can see what it's like. Because who knows what's going to be in the air there? Who knows how toxic the atmosphere?
Yeah, that's true. I'm just so curious. What the hell's, not even that far.
Yeah. See your children's accomplishments and stuff would be cool.
Yeah, that's curious to me. You know what I mean? It's like, that would be really interesting to me. You don't want to know.
I got news for you. My fortune is the last thing I want to know.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that there's a fantastic, that Star Trek Deep Space Nine show had a great kind of very basic time travel thing in which, do you remember that show? Remember that one where they were?
I remember.
I didn't watch Deep Space Nine. I only remember the originals.
I didn't watch it a whole lot, but I remember watching one episode where it's a real basic thing, but the guy goes so far into the future that his son is much older than him, and he has to see his son as an old man, and it's intense, that kind of thing.
I like to be in the writer's room of any show when they start bringing up, let's do a time travel episode. And the next thing you know, everybody's trying to figure out the rules of time travel. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Your story made me think of this crazy thought experiment, because the guy goes back and he's married to a woman now, and he's attracted to this woman in 1939, and he keeps going back to see her, and they hang out, and he's infatuated with her. And I was thinking, if I was married now and I went back to Rome, let's say, and then I met some woman and had like a 50-year romance with, Octavia or something, and then and she passes away, and it's this beautiful thing, and then I come back. I come back to Janet or whoever I'm married to now. I've only been gone like the one day. Have I cheated on her You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you have.
Yes. Yes.
All
the
right.
answer to
Well,
that
hear
is
me
simple.
out.
It's yes. Now, I think that's a clear-cut
The
answer.
answer is yes, you have.
Yes, you have.
And you better bring it up as soon as you get back from Rome. You better just say it right off the bat.
Should I
Just cop
confess
to it
right away? Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
just cop
All
to
right.
it immediately. Do you, Tom Hanks, do you believe in the idea that there was a better time? Do you think 1939 was a better time? Do you think anything was actually a golden age or anything like that?
I
do you buy
not.
that notion?
I do not.
Yeah.
I am a presentist. Does that make sense?
Aha.
Yeah.
That there is
what
only,
does that mean? No, that's cool.
There is only the present, because everything else, and I don't want to overuse this, but I read history for pleasure.
Yeah.
And because nothing is more fascinating, kind of like what people really did. And
yeah,
a guy who grew up essentially in the Soviet Union, it was the first time I came across this concept of cognitive dissonance, in which everybody operated on these agreed upon rules of the Soviet Union. But everybody, and by I mean everybody, also knew that they were unworkable and everybody cheated, you know. Right. You were supposed to, you know, the promise was everybody would work to their best advantage and only take what they needed. But that translated as human nature to everybody worked as little as possible and took everything they could grab. That's just the way. So I look at any period of history that I read it as being that half and half. For everything about it that is extraordinary and wise, there still remains this. It's 50-50, man. It still remains. There was just as much ignorance, the power of idiocy, tyrants.
Prejudice.
I mean, you can talk about how great it would be to be in, okay, let's go back and let's live on a farm in Ohio. All right, let's do that. That sounds like a pretty pastoral place to live. You know how many Native Americans you probably had to kill in order to have that farm? And how many trees you had to cut down and completely alter So for six of one, there's always half a dozen of the other. So I don't think any time has been more malleable than the one that we're sitting in right now.
That's true. Do you think human nature has changed significantly?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I always find this interesting thing. People go like, "Hey, we're just like us. Those ancient Egyptians were just like us," and I'm like, yes. To some extent, but no, too. I'm like, look at their art and look at what they did, and they clearly couldn't be seeing the world the way we did. They couldn't. The mind must have been different. Human nature has to have changed too. No,
look, there's been enlightenment without doubt. I mean, human nature has changed because an awful lot of questions that we have asked about our world has been answered. I mean, we used to believe in a god of the Nile, and, you know, there used to be Apollo dragged the sun across the sky and Artemis dragged the moon. But we have become smarter, wiser. We've answered a ton of questions. But at the end of the day, do we still like the guy who lives across the street from us because he still has that stupid boat up on,
we do not like him.
Can you not? And also, he's always screaming at the kids to stay off his lot. The kids play in the front yard for crying, you know.
You think that guy was back in ancient Rome? Get off my lawn.
Same exact dude.
Same guy.
Get off the forum.
Yeah.
There is always going to be someone who walks into the room and says, "Hey, I'm in charge here."
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's going to be somebody who says, okay, great. I'm glad you're in charge. And there's going to be somebody else who says,
that's great.
Who put you in charge?
No.
Yes,
how come you're in charge? Right. Isn't that, human nature in a nutshell?
Yes.
I mean, kind of like that.
It is.
I was in, I went to Egypt, which was amazing, life altering. And we were shown around the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never been. And look, I just saw the movies, I saw Charleton Heston movies,
sure.
and
Boris Karloff.
all that kind of stuff. That's all it is.
Boris Karloff.
I saw the Mummy.
Right,
that's what I saw. I saw those.
Sure.
So I'm essentially operating on that speed of understanding. I know they're very old, and it's hilarious because when you go see, like, for example, the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, by the way, that are right there. You can see them from your
They're
hotel.
right there, right?
Yeah.
They're like right outside the city.
There's a Pizza Hut, literally. And you can look at the Sphinx and you turn around and look at the parking lot, and there's a Pizza Hut right across the street from the Great Sphinx. So we're there, and it's everything that it's supposed to be. But the fellow who is showing us around is an American, and he's an archaeological engineer, right?
Uh-huh.
And he went the first time that he went there. He was a younger man, and he was a proponent or advocate, or he essentially studied the works of Edgar Cayce and mind dynamics, and it was all about the cosmic power of these mysterious structures, and what do they mean, and what creatures built them, and what power. So that's why he went there with a bunch of those types who are going to go there and celebrate. Oh, we're going to go to the birth of this great cosmic force that is the pyramids and the Sphinx. Because you could have been in 1500 BC in Egypt and have had no idea who built those things. Yeah. We do not know who built them.
They were already ancient.
Right.
Yeah.
So this guy goes as an archaeological engineer, and he spent about 7 minutes in the throes of the great cosmic force that was there. And in the 8th minute, he told himself, "Oh, I see how they built these things."
Oh, really?
The stones are very specifically placed, And so right then and there, I viewed that as like, well, yeah, because if you can't figure out how it got there, you're going to probably swallow anything that. Oh. My this god or this king commended me in order to do it. But the fact is, people worked really hard and put it up.
Yes.
And you take
the actual achievement. Yeah, the actual achievement itself is miraculous.
And not to keep coming back to my Paul Giamatti reference library here, but what happened? What happened in Philadelphia and in other places as well.
Yes.
And in fact, Harari makes this point between the Code of Hammurabi in 1776 BC and the Declaration of Independence in 1776 AD, and just says, look, this is thought. This is work.
It's the same thing.
Hammurabi just said, this is what it's going to be. But you guys, you and John Hancock and all those cuckoo all those nutty kids, argued and stuff like that.
They actually implemented.
But what went into it? What went into it was a lot of thought, a lot of arguing, a lot of compromise, a lot of I give up, just keep it as it is, and change a couple words and I'll be happy. And it ends up being so. What was the most malleable moment? When Hammurabi, put down his code, or that day in 1776, or the day before yesterday?
It's interesting that what people forget about that moment is that the idea of independence from a monarchy like that was not. It was invented somewhat in that form of independence. There had been earlier forms of it, but they'd all led to a new invention. It wasn't a sort of foregone conclusion.
Well, here in America,
too,
a guy came in and said, "Hey, I'm the king of all you guys," and somebody in America said, "Oh, yes, you are. Thank you for being our king." And then a bunch of other guys said, "Well, who made you king?
Yeah. Who made you king?"
I don't think so, sir.
I would argue that the Harari thing is sort of the Enlightenment project. And you see this in books like by Steven Pinker, and I get that. But I would argue that the mindset of the Code of Hammurabi, which is, hey, an eye for an eye, is still in me. It's still in you. It's still in all of us. It's like we've progressed and we have like the state and we have laws and justice, but in there is Tony Soprano, who wants, justice for his daughter, now, and he's not going to wait for the state to do it. And it's like both these are riding in our heads, as we go forward. It's weird.
So, Stephen, I'm asking you, has human nature changed since those days?
I'm with you on that.
But that's more kind of basic animal behavior in some ways, eye for an eye and sort of like territorialism.
I think it's human too.
No, you think that's more human?
Well, yeah, attachment to your kids and what you do for them. It's animal and human, I think. It's rude.
The animals have put real nice nice spins on
we are
savagery.
animals, yeah.
Now, Tom Hanks, you played an astronaut, and
yes, I
so
did.
you know all about space and stuff like that. Are you a guy who buys into UAPs and UFOs? I'm just interested to know what you think of that. But I'm interested, are you a skeptical guy, first of all?
Okay, yeah. I'm willing to give anybody a certain amount of credence up to a certain somewhere on my test of authenticity versus what's the word, probability. I read there was recent, and maybe you might know something about this. Supposedly there's something about a very specific parallel, one of the lines of longitude across America, that for some reason this particular parallel has an awful lot of UFO reportings on either side of it, or
there's
something
all kinds
like
of stuff like that. Sure.
Okay, all right. So I picked up a guy's book about that because I said, well, great, let me read about that. And I'm going to say that there was so little recorded data. It was all a guy saw this and someone heard this, and someone read this, blah, blah, blah. And so there's, no, I saw it. No, it was read. There's photographs that show it, and there's an official report about it. Then I say, and where is, it's a blah, blah. But out of all of this stuff, I'm going to argue with somebody who was flying in an airplane and a jet at a supersonic speed and saw something that they couldn't explain. Yes. I think that I'm going to say this, 99.9% of this is, look, it was a weather balloon. Like I remember them when HBO first started off, they would all have these movies about, Roswell or, and here's a thing, and it was a cover up. And I remember reading this thing, a guy found a piece of material that you could crumple it up.
That's at Roswell, yes,
and
absolutely.
then you would put it down on a table, and it would unfold and be like, and you know what? I was able to do the same exact thing with a hot pad and a sponge. I took a sponge and I crumpled it up and I put it down, and it went
I'd say he's a skeptic.
Perfect rectangle that it was. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
you're skeptical. You're generally skeptical.
I'm not. I'm saying, hey, dude, there's mysteries out there, Jack. There are super duper mysteries. But you remember the face on Mars? That was a big thing. Remember, there was without a doubt. Hey, that's a face on Mars.
Yeah, in the 70s.
That is a face on Mars. Yeah. There it is. Eyes, nose, a bit of kind of looked like Wilson the volleyball, kind of looked like that.
Yes, it did look like Wilson the volleyball.
It did look a little bit like that.
Yes, it did.
And then about 3 years later, they did a Passover, took a picture again, and it was just this mishmash of something got blown away like a sandcastle.
Yeah. I know you're friends with Obama, and I'm just sort of picturing him taking you aside, like, Tom, we really do have the craft in a hangar. We need you to, we're not. Yeah. You ever got that kind of?
No, I never got that level of honesty out of the man.
Right. I certainly, yes, I'm with you in that it's like, and definitely there seems to be something even weirder going on, because you do suddenly have Pentagon. I mean, not just guys who've left the Pentagon, but you have people saying strange
military
things.
Guys,
well, yes, maybe. Yeah, I mean, fairly legitimate people saying strange things. I have a hard time going to the place if there's an alien cadaver in Nevada and stuff like that. I mean, and the guy recently who talks about, he went in one of these ships and it was defied all known laws of physics. It was bigger inside than it was outside.
Well, could they land at Pico and Westwood, for crying out loud? Can they sit down, in Midtown Manhattan and let us know that they're there?
Yeah. I think it's part of like the human psyche to see things in the sky, because we've been doing it since the Bible, and to also sort of have this longing for like, well, maybe there's intelligence out there, and there's this kind of human longing. Yeah.
Well, it's the world's greatest game of operator. You're in a coffee shop in Ames, Iowa, or Dalhart, Texas, and someone comes and I saw a meteor last night. Did you see it? I was out and I was just walking the dog, and I saw a streak across the sky. It looked
Why the
like
Southern
a
accent?
matchstick. I don't know, because and
No,
then
it's
somebody,
good. I'm buying
then
it.
somebody else
So
Tom
says,
Hanks doing it. I'm buying it 100%.
Oh yeah, Lisa Ammerman came in the other day, and she saw a streak across the sky, and you know what? I heard that thing landed just a little outside of Moline. And then someone else comes in. I heard from Rachel that Lisa told her that a streak landed across the sky and something landed in Moline. And dang, if it was about the size of a Volkswagen bus and had doors on the side, it just, spins right along.
Well, it's collective. Yeah, the collective delusion begins to really gain a lot of momentum when everybody starts participating in something.
I'm going to tell you right now, Paul Giamatti, there are people out there. There are people out there that served you a dish of your favorite ice cream somewhere. And they have turned that brief interaction with you into something much greater than it.
No, you're absolutely right.
Paul Giamatti came in for a cup of Rocky Road, and he was really pissed off about something. And you weren't. You were just,
you're absolutely right. No, that's an excellent.
Good analogy.
In which case, I'll come back to you again, Stephen Asma. Has human behavior changed over the course of the millennium?
But that's that thing that Steve and I are fascinated by, though, is that's imagination, too. And it's like your imagination begins to just endlessly.
That goes back again to the cognitive revolution, because there was one way of looking at lions at the water hole, right? We went down to the water hole and there were lions at the water hole. So we turned around and came back.
Yeah.
Then there's somebody who has the imagination to say, last time we went down to the water hole, there were lions. Maybe we shouldn't go today, right? But the next step in cognitive, in that cognition is, I sense that there are lions at the water. You might not doubt any of those people, right? And from there, you get into someone that's going to say, we better not go because Christy says there are lions at the water hole. And somebody else says, how does she know?
Thank God Christy's here. But that's that thing. That's an interesting thing you're always talking about, Steve, which is that imagination is a function originally as this kind of like warning system, as a kind of like it's assessing sort of danger and assessing your environment. And
the lion at the water hole, the crocodiles. I mean, the first imaginative works we have, like the book, basically the Epic of Gilgamesh. You look at the Sphinx, they're these hybridized creatures that really represent real threats or predators in the environment, but they've been, like amplified into these narrative structures, like so that kids will stay away from the woods or stay away from the watering hole. Right. So like monster movies, all that stuff is like an expression of a sort of adaptive imagination.
Now, here's something that is undeniable, because it's happened to me and I bet it's happened to you. Have you guys ever had that moment where you're in motion and you sense something and hesitate, just stop? And it's a good thing you did, because there was a big chunk of barbed wire that messed up right there. That's happened to me. That's happened to me in an automobile while I was leaving the set of something, and my it was late at night. We were, one of those night shoots. It's too cold. It goes on too long. Yes, and I had to work at every damn shot until we were wrapped. And I'm leaving, and I couldn't get the fog off my windshield, and I just was like coming out of the parking lot, and I just slowed and slowed and slowed, and then I stopped. Yeah. And when I did it, if I had not stopped, I would have run into the back of a flatbed truck right on the corner.
Yeah, how do you explain that?
I do not have an explanation of that other than we got some sort of magic for it. And I bet you anybody listening to this says, I did that. I walked into a room and I knew somebody was there or something like that.
Totally. Well, yes, I knew somebody was, yes. Well, that sense of like someone's in the house. It's someone's broken into that. But I mean, isn't that the same function if you meet someone and you're like, ooh, this guy? I don't know about this guy. You know what I mean, though? And then it turns out you were right. You know what I mean? Like you meet somebody and everybody loves this guy. He's the best. We love this guy. And you're like, I have this all the time. And I'm like, I don't know about this guy. And then it turns out I wasn't wrong.
If I was describing the day and a half I spent on the set of Johnny.
Everybody likes this guy, Tom Hanks. I don't get it.
Right. God, this Hanks guy. Yeah. But you have those instincts about people, or you have those instincts about a place, or about like, but I can translate that into going in somewhere and saying, whoa, something really bad happened here. I've told you, Steve, about the time I was in this ruined abbey in Wales, and I walked into this part of it and I went, whoa, something really bad happened in here and I got to get out of here.
Really?
And it was like, it really, and that didn't happen to me all the time, things like that, but it hit me immediately too. It was this
it's like being in really bad, creepy, inhuman architecture, you know?
Yeah.
Like you go into a building that is supposed to,
Chinese,
you're supposed to be,
well, that's that feng shui thing, which I get really freaked out by.
I totally get that.
I feel that if something's wrong, but you're exactly right. It's just inhuman thing like that.
I found out from an architect, he kept talking about the golden mean. Well, that's the golden mean. I said, what is the golden mean? I said, well, the golden mean is it's this mathematical thing that, the height is 1 plus a half of what that is.
Right.
And you probably notice that the most comfortable rooms you've ever been in are following the principles of the golden mean. And I started paying attention. I said, they're absolutely right.
Yeah.
As well as feng shui.
Feng shui. That's a big deal. Yeah.
But that's a symmetry thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a symmetry thing.
Now, why do we react to that in a certain way? Why is it, literally a pleasant space to inhabit?
I was living in China and I was looking for an apartment, and the guy said we were overlooking the Suzhou River, and this was in Shanghai, and he goes, this has great feng shui because the chi energy comes down the river, blasts you in your apartment. And it did feel really, I know, it's like, okay. But I felt really good there because the aesthetic properties were, like you said, I think like a kind of a golden ratio thing. It had kind of harmonized, de-stressed me.
Something about our response to sort of is symmetry or something like that. I mean, people talk about symmetrical faces being things that babies respond to more than, like, say my face, which is not terribly symmetrical. And it's like, well, in a way, it's asymmetrically symmetrical. But so like there's something about that. But the interesting thing with the feng shui thing with the Chinese is, by the same token, then sometimes when they go, oh, the feng shui with this is great, you're like, this is nuts. There's a house in Vancouver. Tom Hanks, you've probably worked in Vancouver, and you've maybe even seen this place. I have never worked
in Vancouver. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you got to get a job in Vancouver. But there's like a traffic island, the most random traffic island, sitting right down in the weirdest place in Vancouver, and some Chinese billionaire has built this bizarre little house on this traffic island because his feng shui guy told him this is the place. This is the energetically, the chi is great here. He's got this bananas house with this crazy door that was also apparently like, your door needs to be about 3.5 feet taller and skinny. It's just the craziest looking house. So that's weird to me, the feng shui thing with that.
Well, let's keep an eye on that guy.
Let's definitely keep an eye on that guy. But it's something about you respond to symmetry. We like things to be symmetrical or something.
And yet, we can go to these other places and they are incredibly pleasant to be in because they are not symmetrical.
They're not at all.
Right.
Yeah, they're not at all symmetrical.
Yes.
And the Japanese have that whole tradition of wabi-sabi, of things like
how was the quality of your life in that perfect feng shui apartment there?
It was not good because it was one of these the Chinese.
It's not good, ladies
during
and
gentlemen. A certain period, we're just slapping apartments up, and it was just for all kinds of everything was breaking. It was just disaster. But
I'm going to tell you right now, that guy said, this stupid American is in here. I'm going to throw some feng shui verbiage at him.
Totally.
And he's going to buy it.
Absolutely. He'll buy this shit.
I was suckered by feng shui.
the bottom of the hill like this. This is the best place for feng shui because all your good fortune will roll down the hill into your front door.
Well, you have been very generous with your time, Tom.
You have been more than generous. Really. You've been here for a really long time.
Guys, honestly, outside of cheeseburgers and a cup of coffee, I can't imagine a better way to spend an hour.
Very kind.
Oh, well, very good. This is a real pleasure. Thank you so much, man, for doing this and taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Let's do it again in a year or so. Awesome. We'll have stuff to talk about.
Please, we'd love to.
You know why we'll have stuff to talk about, Stephen? Because human nature never changes.
There you go. You were right.
Love it. Fantastic, sir. Thank you very much, Tom
Thank
Hanks.
you, guys. Great talking to you.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Editing and mixing by Jeff Neal. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.